Good morning, friends. Today we're going to continue with Charlotte's Web, Chapter 20, The Hour of Triumph. Special announcement, said the loudspeaker in a pompous voice. The management of the fair takes great pleasure in presenting Mr. Homer L. Zuckerman and his famous pig. The truck bearing this extraordinary animal is now approaching the infield. Kindly stand back and give the truck room to proceed. In a few minutes, the pig will be unloaded in the special judging ring in front of the grandstand, where a special award will be made. Will the crowd please make way and let the truck pass? Thank you. Wilbur trembled when he heard this speech. He felt happy, but dizzy. The truck crept along slowly in low speed. Crowds of people surrounded it, and Mr. Arable had to drive very carefully in order to not run over anybody. At last he managed to reach the judge's stand. Avery jumped out and lowered the tailgate. I'm scared to death, whispered Mrs. Zuckerman. Hundreds of people are looking at us. Cheer up, replied Mrs. Arable. This is fun. Unload your pig, please, said the loudspeaker. All together now, boys, said Mr. Zuckerman. Several men stepped forward from the crowd to help lift the crate. Avery was the busiest helper of all. Tuck in your shirt, Avery, cried Mrs. Zuckerman, and tighten your belt. Your pants are coming down. Can't you see I'm busy, replied Avery in disgust. Look, cried Fern, there's Henry. Don't shout, Fern, said her mother, and don't point. Can I please have some money? I want to go on the Ferris wheel again. Mrs. Arable opened her handbag. Here's 40 cents. Now don't get lost and be back at our regular meeting place by the pig pen very soon. Fern raced off. The Zuckerman pig is now being taken from his crate. Stand by for an announcement, boomed the voice on the loudspeaker. Templeton crouched under the straw at the bottom of the crate. What a lot of nonsense, muttered the rat. What a lot of fuss about nothing. Over in the pig pen, silent and alone, Charlotte rested. Her two front legs embraced the egg sack. Charlotte could hear everything that was said on the loudspeaker. The words gave her courage. This was her hour of triumph. As Wilbur came out of the crate, the crowd clapped and cheered. Mr. Zuckerman took off his cap and bowed. Lurvy pulled his big handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the sweat from the back of his neck. Avery knelt in the dirt by Wilbur's side, busily showing off. Mrs. Zuckerman and Mrs. Arable stood on the running board of the truck. Ladies and gentlemen, said the loudspeaker, we now present Mr. Homer L. Zuckerman's distinguished pig. The fame of this unique animal has spread to the far corners of the earth, attracting many valuable tourists to our great state. Many of you will recall that never-to-be-forgotten day last summer when the writing appeared mysteriously on the spider's web in Mr. Zuckerman's barn, calling the attention of all and sundry to the fact that this pig was completely out of the ordinary. This miracle has never been fully explained, although learned men have visited the Zuckerman pig pen to study and observe the phenomenon. In the last analysis, we simply know that we are dealing with supernatural forces here. In the words of the spider's web, this is some pig. Wilbur blushed. He stood perfectly still and tried to look his best. This magnificent animal, continued the loudspeaker, is truly terrific. Look at him, ladies and gentlemen. Observe his spotless skin, the healthy pink glow of his ears and snout. It's the buttermilk, whispered Mrs. Arable to Mrs. Zuckerman. Notice the general radiance of this animal. Then remember the day when radiant appeared clearly in the web. Whence came this mysterious writing? Not from the spider. Spiders are clever at weaving their webs, but spiders cannot write. Oh, they can't they? Murmured Charlotte to herself. Ladies and gentlemen, continued the loudspeaker, I must not take any more of your valuable time. On behalf of the governors of the fair, I have the honor of awarding the special prize of $25 to Mr. Zuckerman, together with a handsome bronze medal, suitably engraved for this radiant, terrific, humble pig in attracting so many visitors to our county fair. Wilbur had been feeling dizzier and dizzier through this long complimentary speech. When he heard the crowd begin to cheer and clap, he suddenly fainted away. His legs collapsed and his mind went blank. Avery was kneeling by Wilbur's head, and the voice on the loudspeaker said, What's going on, Zuckerman? What's wrong with your pig? He's all right, cried Mr. Zuckerman. He gets these spells. He's modest, and he can't stand praise. Well, I can't give a prize to a dead pig, said the loudspeaker. He isn't dead, hollered Zuckerman. He fainted. He's just embarrassed. Run for some water, Lurvy. Lurvy sprang from the judge's ring and disappeared. Templeton poked his head from the straw and noticed that the end of Wilbur's tail was within reach. Templeton grinned. "I'll tend to this," he chuckled. He took Wilbur's tail in his mouth and bit it, just as hard as he could bite. The pain relieved Wilbur. In a flash, he was back on his feet. "Ouch!" he screamed. "Hooray!" yelled the crowd. "He's up. Good work, Zuckerman. That is some pig." Mr. Zuckerman was pleased. He sighed with relief. No one had seen Templeton. He had done his job well. And now one of the judges climbed into the ring with the prizes. He handed Mr. Zuckerman 2 $10 bills and a $5 bill. Then he tied the medal around Wilbur's neck. Then he shook hands with Mr. Zuckerman while Wilbur blushed. A photographer took Wilbur's picture. A great feeling of happiness swept over the Zuckermans and Arables. This was the greatest moment in Mr. Zuckerman's life. It is deeply satisfying to win a prize in front of a lot of people. As Wilbur was being shoved back into the crate, Lurvy came charging through the crowd carrying water. His eyes had a wild look. He dashed the water at Wilbur, but he missed his aim, and the water splashed all over Mr. Zuckerman and Avery, and they got wet. "For goodness sake, what ails you?" "Well, you asked me for water," said Lurvy, "but I didn't ask you for a shower bath," said Mr. Zuckerman. The crowd roared with laughter. Even Mr. Zuckerman laughed too. And of course, Avery thought it was funny to find himself wet, and he started to act like a clown and make faces and rub imaginary soap under his armpits. Then he dried himself with an imaginary towel. "Avery, stop it. Stop showing off," said his mother. But the crowd loved it. Avery heard nothing but the applause. He liked being silly in a ring with everybody watching. When he discovered there was still a little water in the pail, he raised it in the air and dumped it on himself. The children in the grandstand screamed and laughed in appreciation. At last things calmed down. Wilbur was loaded into the truck. Avery was led from the ring by his mother and placed on the seat of the truck to dry off. The truck, driven by Mr. Arable, crawled slowly back to the pig pen, and Avery's trousers made a big wet spot on the seat. And we'll continue tomorrow, guys. Have a great day.